In 1983, my father was murdered. And for years, I created an imaginary perfect father to cope with the loss of him. When I hit my mid-20s, I came to understand that my father wasn't the man that I had created, and in fact was rather complex. But I had the desire to really try to understand him, but there was no way for me to do that because I didn't have his stories. And so I always longed for that. And that's partly why I wrote this novel. All I had were a few childhood memories of him. And when I was 15, I was on holidays with my dad, and it was pretty much the last time that I saw him. I discovered that my dad, he couldn't read or write. He was writing a postcard home, and he just signed his name, and his name was just a scribble. And I said to him, Dad, why aren't you writing on it? And he just sort of shrugged and felt quite embarrassed about it. And then that's when I realized Dad didn't know how to read or write, and that's partly why I was never read to by my dad. Dad, he had a violent temper, and at times I was really quite terrified of my father. But when I would watch war films with him, I, for some reason, always felt really safe. Dad also had a really large scar on his leg, and when I would ask him about it, or my sisters would ask him, he would say he was bitten by a giant water snake when he had fought in the Korean War. Not until after I wrote my book, I learned that the scar on his leg happened when he had volunteered at 17 in the Korean War, and in fact was in a tank battalion and was blown up. The tank was blown up, and he had shrapnel hit him. So, this novel was really a way for me to explore who my father was and what perhaps were his stories. Michael and his father, Rudy, are aspects of my father. The good parts of my dad I put into Michael, and the cool parts of my father I put into Rudy. I was also able to understand, like, by doing that process, I was able to understand my father better, and what I didn't expect by unearthing parts of him, I found that I had been carrying around wounds that were my parents' wounds, generational trauma, guilt, and shame for being German. By writing this novel, I gained a deeper sense of compassion for my father and mother, and I started to record my mom's war stories with a deeper understanding and with way more compassion for her. I believe for the first time I gave my parents a voice. I don't believe they ever understood the trauma or the shame or the guilt that they carried throughout their lives. Or that they even had post-traumatic stress on the things that they really witnessed as children. I say this because of a conversation I had with my mom. During one of my recordings of her, she had said, "What could I have done?" And it was in that moment I understood more than ever that Mom was feeling guilt for World War II war atrocities. I don't think she had ever heard someone say to her, Mom, you were a child and you had nothing to do with the atrocities of World War II. You have no need to feel guilt or shame. She was 5 years old and in fact was a victim and a survivor of World War II. My mom, she witnessed brutalities that no child should really know. But that day of us talking, she heard those words for the first time. For me, I went on a quest to discover who my father was, and what I found was the heart of my mother. I discovered a part of me that needed healing, and I realized there are no easy answers in life. Life is really quite complex, and all I can do is help push the pendulum towards a kinder world.